Hi, and thank you for your interest in advanced allocations. The purpose of this video is to provide an overview of Advanced Allocations version 7.0 for Dynamics GP. Compared with standard allocations, Advanced Allocations offers dramatically easier setup, particularly when allocating many accounts, reduced maintenance, and Tier 1 allocation functionality. Before presenting its differentiating features, let's review some terminology. With advanced allocations, you need to specify 4 different types of GL accounts: source accounts, offset accounts, target accounts, and base accounts. Source accounts are accounts carrying amounts that are to be allocated. These are typically expense accounts that normally have a debit balance. Offset accounts are accounts that are credited during allocation processing. An offset account can be the same account as the source account, or it can be a different account. Whether it is the same or different controls whether or not the source account is affected by allocations. Target accounts are accounts that are typically debited during allocation processing. These are accounts where allocated amounts are posted to. Base accounts are accounts used to determine the basis of allocation to target accounts. These are optional. Base accounts are very often unit accounts, but they can also be posting accounts. Now, let's look at what sets Advanced Allocations functionality apart from native GP functionality. You can perform intercompany allocations, including the ability to base allocations on any accounts in any company. In native GP, you are limited to a single account per allocation. In advanced allocations, you can specify a list of accounts or ranges of segment values. This can be a massive time saver during setup and maintenance. You can use offset accounts in advanced allocations, which allow source accounts to remain unaffected by allocations. You can allocate only a portion of source accounts instead of their entire balances using the allocation factor feature. You can base allocations on amounts that reside in Excel. You can process allocations on demand. This is critical for allocations that are based on final GL amounts. Further, you can apportion either period or year-to-date amounts. You can automatically process allocations in a predetermined order and in such a way that later allocations take into account earlier ones. You have the ability to specify allocations for specific vendors or employees. You can post allocations to a reporting ledger, allowing financial reporting with or without the effective allocations. Now, let's take a look at how you would set up a simple allocation. Then later, we'll look how to process it. First, I'll open the Advanced Allocations card. Then I'll visit each field. First, I'll assign a unique ID to the allocation. Now, I'll give it a description. If the allocation was to be part of a tier group, I would assign it a number. In this case, I will skip. Next, I specify the ledger ID. This determines which of the 3 Dynamics GP ledgers the allocation will post to. If the desire is to separate allocations for reporting purposes, select a ledger other than base. I will select base in this example. This allocation will be based on user percentages. Other options include based on other posting, unit accounts, budget amounts, and Excel. If the allocation is to be based on budget amounts, the Budget ID dropdown would be available to specify which specific budget. Next, I set whether this allocation should allocate period-to-date amounts or year-to-date amounts. I'll accept the default. This allocation is not intercompany, so I'll leave the intercompany checkbox unmarked. The balancing account field is where I determine the account that gets any rounding differences. I'll enter my suspense account. Every journal transaction in GP requires a source document or journal. The source document field allows me to define which journal is posted to in GP. I'll select Advanced Allocations. If I want to allocate individual transactions within an account, I mark the Details checkbox. If I mark this, I can also enter a vendor ID or employee ID in the Orange Master ID field to limit the allocation. For this example, I'll leave it unmarked. Next is the period year-to-date selection for base accounts. This is disabled since this particular allocation is not based on balances in other accounts. I will revisit this later in the demonstration. I have finished completing the general information about the allocation. Now, I will define the accounts to be allocated, also known as source accounts. That is done on the left side of the form. There are a number of ways I can define the source accounts and their offset accounts. First, I can assign them to a list, one by one. If you have many source accounts to define, you may opt to use the Auto button. This allows you to enter many accounts by using an account filter. I'll enter a filter so that all accounts in Department 200 are added. The last method available of assigning source accounts is the Ranges of Segments method. To assign this way, click the Ranges of Segments option. Now, you can specify a range of values for each segment in your chart of accounts. I'm going to populate the windows so that all P&L accounts in Department 200 will be allocated. Note that I can set up as many range rows as I like, and the rows can be include or exclude rows. I'll enter an exclude row so that no 6100 series accounts are allocated. Now let's talk about target accounts. I am going to enter 4 or 5 target accounts and enter a percentage for each one. That's it. A simple fixed percentage allocation is set up. Before moving on to processing, let's look at a more complex example. This one is intercompany and uses base accounts instead of fixed percentages. To set the base accounts for a target account, select the target, then click the Define Base Accounts button. In this example, I am setting one base account per target. Know that you can have as many base accounts as you wish, and they can be specified by list or ranges. Also notice we have set the period YTD base option to year to date so that we base the allocation on head counts, not the change in head count for the period. Now, let's look at allocation processing. Allocation processing consists of 3 steps: Create, List, and Post. Create calculates the allocation amounts and stores them in an edit file. List shows you the calculated allocation amounts. And Post creates the allocation journal entries in the GL in an unposted state. If you create and list transactions and discover an error, you can simply click the Undo button and start over. To start processing, I select the period to allocate. The base period will default to the same period. If I want to get base amounts from a different period, I just change the base period option. Next, I select Posting Method. Summary means one debit or credit per account, which is faster than Detail. Detail means one debit or credit per source target combination. This is slower but provides for better audit trails. Then I select the allocations that I want to process. Let's start with the one I first set up, the one with fixed percentages. Let's now look at the second allocation we set up. We create the entries. This time, when we list the entries, we also opt to include the base balances list. Now we can see a list of the allocation entries along with base account information for audit purposes. That concludes our overview of advanced allocations. Advanced allocations for Dynamics GP is dramatically easier to set up, has reduced maintenance, and provides you with Tier 1 allocation functionality. For more information, visit www.admiral-west.com/advanced allocations. Email info@admiral-west.com or call 866-794-1275 extension 2 to schedule a personal demonstration.